10 myths about the current market. Let me just punch it up, Darren. We'll get
Yeah, I
started.
was impressed with this. You get a lot of articles out there that are kind of either super obvious or not at to the meat and the
Mhm.
like most relevant components of what's going on in the market.
Right.
This one is a little bit for the buyer side, a little bit for the seller side,
Yeah.
and they're important things to understand. Um,
Well, that's the thing, as I was telling you, last week it touched on uh, buyers waiting out the market and the issues with that, depending upon who you are. But yeah, this is a nice sort of second part of that in terms of not only buyers need to think about this market, but also sellers. And as we know, we can all get a little lazy about it. And I think this gives us a reality of where we are and where we need to go. So,
yep.
all right. Well, beautiful graphic there. Busted 10 myths buyers and sellers believe about the current market. So, this comes from inman.com. Again, real estate industry media source for a lot of agents and brokers across the nation. And it goes on here. In today's wild market, there are plenty of bad ideas on both sides of the buyer seller equation. Here's how to correct those misconceptions so that everyone can get what they want. Um, and that is really good what this person just said. So everyone can get what they want. That really is what it's about. It's not winners and
Right.
losers. It's about what people can get on both sides. So this April, one of Inman's most, oh no, let me skip that. The current market has sellers thinking they've won the lottery, cashing out on their time and their terms. However, they are in a quandary about where to go. On the other hand, buyers are feeling defeated many times over before they start. Some have put in so many offers, they have grown weary and started to sit on the sidelines or put their search on pause, waiting for things to soften, whenever that might be. The current market is extremely challenging in different ways for both buyers and sellers. What are the top myths sellers and buyers believe, and how can you bring them back to reality? So, seller myth number one: no seller preparation is needed. We're broken records here, aren't we, Darren?
Mm.
Today's sellers think they don't have to bother doing much to get their house ready for sale. They think it should sell in a matter of hours or after 2 days of back to back open houses. Why bother? Because they don't have much competition at all. Wrong. Buyers still need to see a clean and well presented home that helps to inspire confidence that they aren't buying a money pit. Unless the property is being marketed as a teardown or total fixer upper, a home that appears dirty, messy, and not well maintained may cost a seller money in terms of fewer offers and less aggressive ones at that. A home may lag on the market versus being a hot commodity that everyone wants the first day it hits. In the current climate, a property that sits on the market for more than a few days may create the perception that something is seriously wrong with it. Additionally, a home that is just thrown on the market may have to substantially renegotiate with the buyer after going under contract because the same issues are likely to come up with the next buyer. Darren?
Yeah, simply decluttering and small cleanups. I was just trying to put some numbers behind it, and what
Yeah.
came to mind is, gosh, if you're probably making about $1,000 an hour at this point if you're a seller. If you put like 20 hours into decluttering, organizing, and very small touch ups, you will get 20,000 more for sure on the
Wow,
price.
man. That is a really good. Yeah, I've never heard you say it that way, but gosh, that makes a lot of sense. I like that.
The numbers are really obvious on some of these fundamental things. You get into
Let's talk
bigger
about it, shall
projects,
we? Hmm.
then we still think the numbers are good, but at minimum, do the front loaded, easy things.
Hmm. All right. Well, let's go on to the next one. So, seller myth number two: there's no such thing as a crazy asking price. Along with not having to properly prepare their home for sale, sellers are all about defying the odds and wanting to set an overly ambitious asking price. Never mind that they want 50,000 more than the neighbor's home that came on the market 2 weeks ago that was much nicer and highly upgraded. In a market like this, sometimes it might stick and other times it might not. Given the fast pace of how properties are selling, we will know very quickly how the buyer audience will respond with a lot of showing traffic and multiple offers or not. Although we are typically seeing very few price reductions, there are a handful of listings that are lagging on the market as a result of being overpriced and having to make price reductions. Making a price reduction in a market like this also raises eyebrows with buyers and may send the signal that you are more negotiable as a result. Wow.
Yeah, it's nice to see these things in written format that we can read
Hmm.
coming from our mouths.
Yeah.
And they sound kind of negative, but they're not negative. They're just, you know, even the best product you have to sell is
Yeah.
reality. It could be the most amazing thing, and the seller might be right that they have a fantastic product. But if you don't sell it, you will get less.
Yeah.
If you can't just say the product sells itself, it doesn't work
No.
that way.
No. Okay. Seller myth number 3: post closing occupancy is free and guaranteed. As a seller, you have likely been able to negotiate with the buyer to stay in your home past closing on your time and terms. Some sellers expect to be able to stay at little to no cost to them. Well, it might not be that simple. With interest rates on the rise, buyers are having to pay substantially more for the same loan amount they were looking at 1 or 2 months ago. Additionally, there are complications with the buyer allowing a seller to stay in possession past closing if they are getting a mortgage. Lenders will typically allow a seller to stay in a home up to 60 days past the closing date. Anything beyond that could trigger the property to be considered investment property, and the buyer could be charged a higher interest rate. As a result, more complications can ensue with regards to obtaining homeowners insurance for the buyer and the potential risks involved by a seller occupant as far as damage, wear and tear, and repairs. Buyers have already taken some huge risks with buying a property as far as their offer price and other terms, but agreeing to allow a seller to stay in their former home for several months on end at little to no cost to them can be a harder sell as the market starts to change.
Right. Yeah, supply and demand. If the competition's there, then people are getting rent backs at no charge for
Yep.
sure.
Yep.
But the article's correct. What may have been a $4,000 or $5,000 monthly payment is now a $6,000 monthly payment.
Yep.
It's just an additional cost that the buyer is paying because they're having to pay the mortgage. So at some point, it could not make sense that we're not there now, but it's
Yep.
something to be aware of.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. I wonder, again, because we find these articles that are national. I wonder if this person, it's actually an agent that wrote this opinion piece. Maybe in some other parts of the country they might be feeling it. I don't know, but we're not feeling it.
Yeah, no, we're not. They're still getting the sellers are getting the rent backs the time they want, and more often than not at no charge. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Next one. Let's see. Seller myth number 4: selling as is easy peasy. Given the current climate, sellers think they should be able to sell their home as is without making any repairs. Sometimes that is easier said than done. The words as is can often scare a potential buyer into thinking there is something major wrong, even if there isn't. Sellers need to understand that structural issues in older systems like electrical, plumbing, heating, and cooling systems nearing the end of their life, older roofs, termite damage, evidence of past moisture leaks can all be deal killers for buyers. A seller would be wise to address any known major issues prior to coming on the market.
Right, or at minimum, provide reports and disclosures that identify them.
Yeah.
I think the riskiest moment um, in clearly the riskiest moment in a escrow is the inspection, and buyers have built up and they're in the honeymoon phase. They're very happy. They're super happy about getting the house. And now they're much more open to concerns that may arise. And it's then the buyer's turn to have some negotiating power potentially.
Hmm.
So if there's undisclosed things that come up at inspection, they can either change their perception of the property, maybe have a little buyer's remorse, or ask for very large credits to cover
Yeah.
the repairs.
Well, right. We talk about this, right? There's the romance part of the relationship, and then there's the, oh shoot, I'm really getting married part of it.
Right.
And
Totally.
we all experience that, as you called it, buyer's remorse, or wow, this is real. I can't just be in love. I've got to really take this seriously. Um, so it's true, very true. Okay, so next is seller myth number 5. Buyers must waive contingencies. Many sellers have grown accustomed to buyers waiving their contingencies in this market. Different buyers have different risk tolerances for this. The single largest transaction someone makes in their lifetime can cause a ton of anxiety already, let alone risking waiving contingencies like the inspection, appraisal, and financing with it. Having this attitude may scare off and eliminate solid buyers from consideration. Sellers need to be cognizant of the fact that buyers, at the very least, will not want to waive an inspection contingency. They may offer to limit their time frame for inspections and other contingencies, but having the inspection, they must waive all of them. The expectation they must waive all of them is not normal, and buyers may not be as apt to do as prices continue to climb along with interest rates. When it comes to buying a home in this market, the experience can be quite frustrating, and buyers often feel like the process is an impossible mountain to climb. It can be easy to fuel misperceptions with every home that comes on the market and talk yourself out of even trying.
Right. It's a scary thing to write
Yeah,
an offer with no contingencies. You're
yeah,
putting, in most cases, you're having to put faith in multiple other people.
yeah.
Um, you're putting faith in the lender if you have a loan, and the lesser your down payment is, the more faith you're putting in them. Because when you have a larger down payment, the likelihood of something going wrong is less. Something going
Mhm.
wrong with the appraisal or qualifying for the loan.
Yeah,
Inspection wise, you've either been able to do a pre-inspection, been given a pre-inspection, or you're trusting your own perception or your agent's perception of condition. Um, so it happens a lot these days in our
yeah,
property we just went into escrow with yesterday. There were a couple very strong buyers who just were not willing to remove loan and appraisal contingencies. And it's incredibly difficult, close to impossible to get an acceptance these days with those in the mix.
yeah,
Um, so keeping your inspection at least
yeah,
is probably the most vulnerable. If that can stay on the table, then great.
yeah, yeah. The last line here in this one, where it says, every home that comes on the market and talk yourself out of even trying, referring to buyers. I don't know if you saw it, but there was a study. I don't know who did it, but it came out on CNN that the majority of uh, people in this day and age really think of being lifelong renters now. That dream of a home is getting a little further away, and that was sad to hear. That was, yeah, sad to read.
It will. I think it'll come back. And the reason I say that is from personal experience.
Uh huh.
And I know when you're, when you're 22, which is the age I can remember, you're not
Hmm.
supposed to be thinking about buying a house, but I was.
Yeah.
And it was like, that's it. The prices are nuts. They don't make any sense. And then there was a big turn in the market. Rates came down, prices came down, and I bought a house at a very young age. So we've had 10 years of prices moving up, and I think there's a lot of people, it's been difficult on their mindset. It's like they've lost confidence, right? And confidence is so important that it's even going to happen, that the
Yeah.
world is going to bend towards them because it's been bending away from them for so long. But it
Yeah.
will bend the other
Yeah.
way at some
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
It's inevitable.
Well, that's good to hear. All right. So now we're about buyer myth. So buyer myth number 6: I'll wait until prices come down. Many buyers decided, even as far back as a year ago, that they would sit out the pandemic real estate boom because prices were getting too high, were unattainable, and they believed that prices would come down. Those same buyers are paying significantly more for the same properties than they would have a year ago, not to mention interest rates being 1 to 1.5% higher. What buyers don't understand is it's not just about high prices, but rather about low to no inventory, which has been continuing well into 2022. In some cases, inventory levels are worse than before. The low inventory climate is not likely to change anytime soon. New construction supply continues to be constrained, and prices have risen significantly, often pricing buyers out of certain price ranges. Continuing to take a wait and see out attitude will likely further the gap between affordability relative to actual options that they want. In the meantime, rents are at an all-time high, causing many would-be buyers to be trapped between owning and renting, which are both getting equally expensive. There is also a tight supply of properties available for rent as more longtime owners are opting to sell and take advantage of market conditions. So more people in the rental market.
Right.
All right, buyer myth number 7. The real estate market is going to crash. Given the rapid increase in prices, many buyers think the market will be primed to take a huge dive. Some of these buyers weren't adults during the great real estate crash of 2008. It is important to educate buyers as to how and why that happened and what led to such a dramatic downturn. Loose lending guidelines, first and second mortgages, armchair investors who attracted people with little financial stability to roll the dice on everything from new construction to condo conversions, among many other factors, created the perfect storm. The difference now is there is a significant amount of wealth circulating in the real estate market, and there is purchasing power like never before. As a result of the pandemic, people have decided to relocate on their time and terms versus being dictated by a particular life or job event. The run-up on real estate inventory over the last 2 years caused inventory to be gobbled up at a record pace that under normal circumstances would not have happened. Jobs are plentiful and employers are not resisting the great relocation, but rather finding ways to work with it to retain and attract top talent. Buyers waiting for the market to crash may likely be waiting for the train that never comes. In the meantime, prices continue to rise, as do interest rates, and many have been completely priced out of what they wanted to buy a year or so ago. So we talked about this last week. Darren, anything more to add on that?
No, it's a sad situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, waiting doesn't always, that's the risk you take, is that the prices will just continue to rise.
All right, buyer myth number 8. It's important for me to waive all contingencies. Many buyers think they have to waive all contingencies in order to have a competitive offer in today's climate. Not so. Buyers can have contingencies, but they need to be smart about how they structure them in an offer. This means being fully underwritten and approved by a lender before starting their home search. This will allow the buyer to shorten their financing contingency period along with the appraisal contingency. Buyers need to consider if they have the ability to guarantee a certain price to the seller should the property not appraise, and communicate that with their offer. Inspection period timeframes should also be limited to help provide certainty to a seller that all won't be dragged out for no reason. If a buyer presents an offer that shows they have their act together financially, working with a trusted lender who reaches out to the listing agent to assure them about the buyer as well as their process, and that they will work towards an expedited closing, a seller may be apt to choose their offer over others that aren't as detailed or who haven't expressed as much proactiveness in the process.
Right,
Yeah.
and the lesson there is the combination of two things. In choosing an offer, they're looking for a commitment on so many levels. The other agent, if they're engaged, because you're not going to have a direct dialogue with buyer and seller, the other agents are looking for commitment in many different small ways.
Yeah.
When they met them, how they presented their offer, the risks they're willing to take, maybe if they've written a letter, and then they're looking for professionalism from the agent in how the offer is presented, and understanding where the buyers can take risks. So being as aggressive as they can, but as professional as they can. One of the most common things I say to other agents when we're in early negotiations is that I don't want to go through this whole process to not get our offer accepted. I don't want to waste my time. So I feel we have a good shot at it. I feel they're committed to the purchase. Otherwise, I wouldn't be writing this offer with these terms.
Well, I mean, again, the perfect example is our recent transaction out in Palm Springs. That was an agent owner selling his property. And I think you're right, man. He was watching every little bit of how we interacted from the beginning showing to the owner being, the buyer being there, to how he deals with us. And he did not counter, which was really, I think, again, a big compliment for how we do business. He felt that good about it. So the detail and all that helped, as you said.
Absolutely.
Okay, buyer myth number 9. You can't negotiate on overpriced properties. It can be easy to think that there isn't any negotiability on properties on the market today. If a buyer is willing to focus on those that are overpriced and have been lagging on the market for a couple of weeks or have fallen out of contract a few times, they may be surprised at what kind of transaction they can put together within reason. This is not the time to go in with extreme lowball kinds of offers, but rather something reasonable while still limiting timeframes for contingencies to make it attractive to the seller.
I'll say this.
Yeah.
Although I don't see a market shift, we certainly see a lot more dialogue about a market shift, right? There's enough articles that are talking about a market turn, and who knows how the other side sees things, right? Maybe you find the right property and the other side feels there's going to be a shift. Well, that can work to your benefit. So it doesn't hurt to ask. You have limited ability on the front end, but if there's not multiple offers, you're definitely going to have some more leverage and make the request.
Yeah. All right, buyer myth number 10. It's better to buy an off-market property. Some buyers think they will get a better deal if they can just find something not officially on the market. These buyers think there's an owner just waiting to give them a special deal not available to anyone else. Agents expend hours of time and money trying to find these listings. What buyers don't understand about off-market deals is the only way for those to work is if it is on the seller's time and terms. A seller is not going to be able or not willing to compromise much. And of course, they're going to want a premium price because they're not going on the market, or they may plan to if they can't work it out with a buyer and ask even more. Sellers are very savvy and well aware of what the properties around them are going for. They aren't going to leave money on the table because they don't necessarily want to be listed. Off-market properties can also be ripe for more things to go sideways. The seller may not play by the same rules as if they were listed and might drag their feet through the transaction and perhaps threaten to change their mind. If a seller has signed a contract to sell their home to someone else, specific performance clauses still apply, but the time, expense, and hassle of trying to fight that versus trying to find another home to buy might not be worth pursuing for a buyer. Real estate markets wax and wane, and with each shift comes a whole host of myths and misperceptions by both buyers and sellers of how things will be or what to expect. In many ways, myths are a blessing to the agent that knows how to act as an advisor and trusted confidant to duly guide the buyer and seller through turbulent waters to achieve their goals on the other side. All right.
One quick comment about the off-market sale. I think they, from a seller, it's often a very emotional process. There's a lack of professionalism more often than not. Not always, but more often than not. They do change their mind or can be difficult to deal with and don't want to provide the appropriate disclosures and go through the appropriate processes that are dictated by the industry. So, yeah, even if you get an in, sometimes actually closing and completing a sale is hard. We have done a few of them, but you can see the opportunities to go sideways and for it not to work out are always close at hand in a lot of those off-market sales.
Right.